very first step. Again, we must be careful. As one of you pointed out today, this is not supposed to be a knowledge taxonomy. This is just a visual intended to help us think and communicate our understanding. So as you see, it takes understanding to communicate that understanding. It takes reflection on certain tasks, reflecting how knowledge is being constructed to start transferring that knowledge. We'll come back to that later. What we really like about this attempt of categorizing subject literacy is that it has a goal, and that goal would be to use what we learn in school and to actively participate in society. And that is something, this ability to transfer knowledge is the result of digging deep first. I'm not sure if you were at recent flow conferences, because there are other approaches as well. People who think that you can simply teach transferable skills. The more we read, the more we talk to experts in the field, the more we come to believe that this is not the case. It takes subject-specific literacy to arrive at these transferable skills. And the literature is really, really fascinating on that. So then the next question was, if that is where we want to arrive at, how do we get there? How do we lead our students into that? And what we found in Australia is a very nice metaphor, a very powerful metaphor. It is that of the knowledge pathway. It is the idea that there is a pathway into different subjects or disciplines. And these people have analyzed millions of textbooks, maybe thousands. But they realized that this pathway is built by several building blocks. It is knowledge, but knowledge in itself is fuzzy. So we have to be very careful. Knowledge consists of both facts and concepts and procedures and also strategies, because without those strategies, our students will not be able to solve those tasks. And the thing that we directly took, or the idea that we took from John Polius, is that all scientific activity or subjects at school basically can be categorized that they have 4 dimensions, which would be the doing science, the organizing, explaining and arguing. Just doing an experiment, organizing the facts and the things you find out, trying to make sense of the data, and using that data to argue, to construct yet more knowledge. Now we've already changed it in that we made it circular. And you are perfectly right that we should change it again into something that is 3-dimensional, and you pointed out that that may not be enough as well. And you're right, what we need is a spiral and interconnections between points on that spiral, and I'm afraid I don't know how to do that. But we are very much aware of this, and we'll try to show you what we've come up with instead. So the amazing and the, I'd say, mind-blowing thing is that Polius and his colleagues found out that each of these knowledge activity has a corresponding language field, or a corresponding activity, a corresponding text type, or, and here's the frightening term, a genre. And Polius has a very, very simple definition of the word genre. He says it's a way of getting things done in a discipline. It's how we communicate knowledge, it's how we record knowledge, it's how we make sense of our discipline. And if you look at that, you see that each of those activities, the doing things scientifically, describing and sorting things scientifically, has corresponding genres. And they all serve a special purpose. Now, and here is where this becomes truly interesting and fascinating for us teachers and teacher trainers. If you just look at the explanation field, then if you could read it, you could see that there is a number of different types of explanations. And this is something that we didn't even know existed before we started on our journey. So let's make this real simple. This is useful because we can use that to create progressions. And as I said to some of you before, the early version of an explanation, that is how my kids used to explain things when they were in kindergarten, is you have two events, and you connect them in a simple way, in a temporal way, saying, first we did this, and then we did that. Now, that is not yet a real explanation because it misses the causal link. So the next step would then be that two events, A and B, are directly related causally. So we did this, I hit you because you said something nasty to me. That will be the next step. Now, in a school context, that is very useful. And it's getting even more complicated because there are patterns such as this, which we call multi-causal or multi-effect explanations. So these patterns become more complex. Now, the minute teachers see this, they realize that this is very valuable because now we can make it visible to our students how to explain. We can say an explanation consists of two parts. One would be the cause, one would be the effect. We can make that visible by making kids highlight those in different colors, and then we can say, now we have to link that. And we can say, as a result of A, B happens, or A triggers B, A leads to B, and so on and so forth. That's one part. The other part that's still missing is that scientific language is different because it uses lots of noun phrases and nominalizations. So instead of it's starting to rain, we hear words like precipitation. But that is something that is very, very valuable because now we have a very concrete and well theoretized way of teaching our kids how to explain things. And I did that in geography in L1. When we were talking about the tropical rainforest, and we have been at this for 3 weeks. And the students' explanations were poor, even in L1. So we started taking this apart and saying, where are causes, where are effects? And then we started linking them. Now, can we use scientific languages? What are the key terms? And then, as we said, again, this is how we teach the motor business. This is how we teach them to link things, how we nominalize things. And by the end of just a simple 45 lesson, we had an explanation that was light years away from the one we started with. And the thing that I keep telling everybody, if wants to hear it or not, is that by the end of the lesson, one of my kids told me, if that is what you teachers like to hear from us, then why don't you tell us? So that's something very, very useful. It's a kind of linguistics that can help us teachers a lot. So how do we pull all these things together? We have come to realize that what drives learning, and that is something that only came into existence yesterday, are like two blades of a propeller. It is the conceptualizing dimension, the cognitive dimension. And when you look at curricula and content subjects, you see that that is the dimension that is usually very well stressed out and it's very explicit. But that's just one part of the game. We know that it's about facts, that it's about concepts, procedures, and strategies. But with just one rotor blade, that whole airplane would never take off. So we need another dimension, another rotor blade that is as important, as equally powerful as the other, which would be the communicating continuum. So we need to tell our students and teach our students how to communicate for a special purpose, and with purpose we also include audience. So who am I talking to? What is my message? How do I make myself understood? We know that subjects have their own ways of communicating. They have their own modes of output, maps, charts, tables, and so on and so forth. Teaching our students or empowering them to both understand and produce them is an invaluable key to subject literacy. There are German researchers who say that's a necessary ingredient. Without what they call semiotic translation, so from a diagram into a text, from a text into a table, from one language to the other. This is what we use it in as pluriliteracies. So communicating knowledge across languages, across discipline, it's important to vary the modes as well. And then, of course, if I want to communicate subject knowledge, I have to do it in a way that is appropriate to the subject. So I use the ways of getting things done in the subjects, which are the genres. And then it's important to see that style is very important too, because we realize that often academics, but also students, hide behind those bubbles. They can use the terminology, but just because they use them does not necessarily mean that they understand everything. But the minute we ask students to put it in their own words, or put it in their own words first and ask them to then switch to a more scientific register or style, we can make sure that they really understand things. So these are the two rotor blades. Now we need to set them spinning, and what makes them spinning is, or what makes them spin, is create connections between those two axes of continua. That is what drives pluralistic development. It's the combination, or it's the connection between those two continua. And as teachers, it is our job to help kids push up that arc, so become more literate in their subjects by being able to make deeper connections between those two axes. So to move from the beginner to the expert. We talked about the dimensions of scientific activity, those activity domains. If you imagine that as a sphere, and you imagine the kids sitting in an airplane, then they could travel the world as the whole world as beginners, as novices. But the more they learn, the more they progress, the bigger the universe becomes, the more sophisticated and the less simplistic it becomes. So they have more places to travel to and new things to discover, and also more means to express that knowledge appropriately. So moving forward does not only mean learning more genres in a quantitative measure. So you start with 3 and then you end up with 17. That's not it. But you move deeper as well. So you have to be able to express more concepts in that same genre. So we have materials now, which will be uploaded soon, where kids at 3 different age levels are basically doing the very same thing. They start with an experiment. They have to come up with ways of doing that experiment themselves. They have to organize that data, and they have to prepare an episode. All the knowledge that they create from that huge activity, which is very hands-on, which is very project-oriented and very reflective also, leads them into a definition which will reflect the level of understanding. And with the linguistic elements that we just described, it becomes possible to teach students how to move from a rather simple definition to move to a more sophisticated, intermediate definition, and arrive at a highly sophisticated, almost scientific definition. That's our model. So, what does that mean for us and as teachers? If we use a very simple analogy, because we all played with Lego bricks. So, primary students, beginners, they have those huge Duplo bricks. With these bricks, they can almost build anything, but since they're very big, the product that they can arrive at is rather basic. It is a car, and nobody can tell that kid that what they build is not a real car, because it is. But also, it means that we have to give them the tools, the functions, the skills to arrive at a deeper understanding, build, construct deeper knowledge, or a cooler car. And for the very advanced students, we should arrive at something very technical. And guiding our students through that experience is what we mean by taking students on that journey on the knowledge path. That has implications for CLIP. It has implications for education, and we try to visualize that. And what we realized was most important is that we have at least two different ideas of culture. So there's the bigger culture, the society culture, which is important when I communicate what I have in one discipline to somebody from another discipline or somebody from another culture. This is where our country, this is where the bigger culture becomes relevant. But to learn those transferable skills, we have to look at this disciplinary culture. And that has huge implications for lesson planning because it is the disciplinary culture seed that triggers lesson planning and the learning. And Adele has just uploaded a fantastic video where she relates the 4 C's to the literacies. And you need to watch that because she really goes into a lot of details and explaining that. So this is our model in 3 nutshells. 3 different ways of visualizing our journey. Now the thing is, how much more time should we give this? Do we have a little bit more time, or is it okay? So we talked about deep learning, and this thing has not been properly explained, I think. When we use it, we do not use it as a buzzword. So we found a definition that is from a scientific white paper on deep learning and knowledge skills. So here's what it is. It is the ability to learn and take what you learn in one situation and apply it to another. And now, that is key to it, through deeper learning, which often involves shared learning and interactions with others in the community. That's what we saw in the video yesterday. Our students develop expertise in a particular subject, and they master the unique ways of the subject. People ask, why is it tied to a subject? It is because, as I understood it, we have different problem-solving mechanisms. And there are those basic problem-solving mechanisms, and they work. The problem is they're very slow. And those specific ways of both understanding and retrieving information and communicating that information in the subjects, they're just more efficient. Teresa confronted us with an article from Shanahan, and they make it very explicit that people in different subjects read articles in different ways. And here's the killer, none of them use the strategies that we teach in EFL learning. Not a single one. And we have to become aware of that. It's key to deep learning. Now, how do we deep learn? There's 2 ways we can think of that. The one is taken from Vygotskian psychology. Deep learning means that we understand a concept at such a deep level that when we internalize it, it becomes unglued from the original content we learned it through. So then we can apply it to another situation. That's the 3rd stage of what the Vygotskians call the mental phase or the inner phase. So it becomes inner speech. Now, that is only possible if you go through a verbal phase. Kids have to learn how to language it. But now here is where our doing, organizing, and everything kicks in. If you just present kids with a verbal phase, you just basically have a teacher telling them how things work, the best thing you will get is people parroting back at the teacher. There will be no real understanding. Real understanding only kicks in if you have a material phase, where kids get to do hands-on activity with the content. Hands-on activity here means both actually touching things, doing experiments, but also playing with what they call second-order materials, which is maps, diagrams, and so on. But I think what is really important here is that it's about students putting their hands and minds on things. And if we leave that phase away, we will prevent deep learning. So that's one thing. It's from the Vygotskian tradition, those three phases, and it's about internalization of conceptual knowledge. That's one dimension. The other dimension, and please don't be scared, but it took me years to arrive at this, looks like this. We've come to believe, now there's, of course, you find different arguments and different theories, but one that convinced me the most is that there is an interface between what they call the memory-based system and the rules-based system, which means that we can automatize language skills and all relevant skills, also in the subjects, just like we automatize any skill like driving a car. In the beginning, it's really hard. Everything takes a lot of conscious effort. It's almost impossible to smoke in that car while you drive it, while you stick shift it. Watch kids who are 3 years behind the wheel. They can smoke, text messages, use the radio, and still drive their car. That's a result of automatization. Now, the thing is, this is where it becomes complicated, and this is based on Roy Lister's research. There's no direct route from rule-based to the memory-based. That's the sorry thing. But what it means is we have to rethink our culture of practice. So giving our kids gapful activities only, will only make the rule-based system spin faster. But it will not allow for any transfer to the memory-based system. So in order to teach our kids rules and skills, and we want them to automatize them, we need a number of well-balanced practice activities. And it's not only about language, it's about any skill. So they need to be aware of what they're doing. They need to really actively understand it. There needs to be controlled practice, but they also need to have real communicative practice. And communicative practice means talking about meaningful things, learning about meaningful content, and having the opportunity to explore, make mistakes, and it just takes a long time. And they have to reflect on things. And all that is taken from research from different fields. It's from the practice in a foreign language, it's from skill development and automatization, and it is from serious research into learning strategies. So this is what we mean by deep learning. We mean internalization of conceptual knowledge and automatization of relevant skills. And now, the last slide, all this will take time. Just like the butterfly thing. And this is a personal thing. This is what I used in Venice, because shortly before the conference, I received a tweet, and they were asking, what do you think of the term slow education? And I personally have to say, I love it. And I think we have a framework that shows that it's very worthwhile activity to take things deep and take things slow. That is our model in a number of nutshells and analogies. So, thank you very much.